It was fantastic, honestly. It was a great honor, not something I took for granted. Obviously, I was only 21, 22 in 2004, so I'm dating myself. I'm 39 now. Um, but it was the sort of thing where you don't realize it till after the enormity of it. You know the Olympics. It's literally billions of people watching. But for me, it was more like focusing on my family, focusing on my colleagues, my teammates there, and then also friends that I had back all over the world. I say back home, but literally all over the world. But it was just a great honor because I knew that, and I've mentioned this many times, if I'd represented the U.S. or some of these other larger nations, unless you're like LeBron James, Michael Jordan, like Michael Phelps, whatever, like you're kind of lost in the shuffle. Where for me, having a smaller stage to a smaller country to represent it, I knew that I had a larger platform and I had more eyes on me and more weight of the nation supporting me. And that I took as a great honor, and it wasn't lost on me.
Mm. And obviously, the highlight for me, that's for me personally, at the Olympics, 2004 Olympics, when you were running, was that trip, and then you continued, and obviously with a very sore ankle. What pushed you that time?
Uh, I mean, again, I think the Olympics are a great event, global event, historic. But I think too often we get tied up into winning first, second,
Mm,
third, and other than that, it doesn't matter. And how fast you ran and things like that. And the Olympics is about the whole world coming together. Putting down their arms, putting down their differences. And for me, it was really an honor again being there because I got to see again, this is at the beginning of the 2000s, American friends of mine that were in the Olympic teams getting to know Iraqi Olympians as well. And this was a time where those two countries were not on such friendly ground. So I knew that the Olympics were much bigger than about competing. So when I was out there, I had a race plan. My coach and I trained. I was so fit that it was really, really disappointing that the trip happened,
mm,
that the accident happened. But I knew that I was there running for more than just myself. I was running for the Olympic spirit, running for Equatorial Guinea, running just to maybe inspire that kid, that young boy, young girl at home watching to not give up, and something that I could look back and tell my kids about. So a combination of adrenaline and rage kicked in, and I was like, I have to finish. So I got up and I ran as fast as I could to try to catch up. But obviously, as the adrenaline wore off, my ankle really started to hurt, and I knew my race was over. I knew I wasn't going to qualify, but I knew that I still had to hold my head up high because you're not out there by yourself. You're up there representing an entire country, and I want to give the best face possible.
mm. And obviously, you had to withdraw from the 3,000 meter steeplechase after
Yeah.
that. How disappointed were you to undergo that?
Mate, I was absolutely gutted. I mean, to
Oh,
this day, because the steeplechase is actually one of my favorite, if not favorite, event to both watch at the Olympics and also compete in. And I knew that I couldn't line up and do it justice. I could line up and just kind of check that box, but like I was afraid I would do more damage because of the nature of the event,
mm,
jumping, landing, the water hazard as well. So I couldn't even limp my way through it. I had a hard enough time walking. So I was disappointed, but I spoke to my coach. I spoke to the federation delegates, and I said, "Listen, I want to represent Equatorial Guinea as best as possible, and I don't want to do more damage. And I think this would be doing a disservice to the country, to my colleagues, and to the event as well. I think if you're in the event and things go sideways, that's one thing. But lining up, knowing that I was going to be out there for way longer than I should. It's not something I wanted to do. So it was disappointing, but it was a great learning lesson.
mm. And what was the reception like back home in Equatorial Guinea? Obviously, you must have had probably messages from back home, especially from your mom, your friends watching, especially
Yeah.
after that trip that time. What was the support like? What was the message to you then?
Yeah, the message was really supportive because people just haven't been on that sort of world stage. The people that you're trying to inspire, they got it right away, and
Mm,
they see, some people knew me from when I was a little kid. Some people knew my family and they never met me, and some people just knew my name from somebody who studied and went to school in the U.S. But all that we're all one nation, and there was so much unity. So yeah, there was a lot of disappointing and people saying, you know, I wish you could have done better, but there's also a lot of support, like, hey, you were out there, you did really great, and we're really happy that you were able to represent us. So I think for me it was more like I internalized the disappointment differently, because I have my own standards, and at the end of the day I wanted to do better, and I knew I could do better, and I was in much better shape. So it was great to have that support. And years later, since I've gone back as recent as December of 2019, I still have people stop me in the street and remember that. So it's a nice feeling.
We're just going to take a quick break just now, and when we come back, we will talk about the later part of your life and obviously what you're into now. So stay there, and we'll be back soon. This is Beta Convo. Hello, welcome back. My name is Wale, and you're still watching and listening to Beta Convo. I've got with me Roberto Mandje, Equatorial Guinea, Olympian. Obviously, you probably might remember him from 2004 Olympics. So that's the man I'm talking about, okay? Roberto, thank you for joining us once again.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
I know we talked a bit about the Olympics, and I told you obviously my highlights from the Olympics, obviously the trip and whatever you. What would you say was the most memorable thing you look back to when you remember the Olympics, aside from the trip? You know, what would you? I know you said you're going to tell your kids, your children about the fact that it takes bravery and what have you. But aside that, what would you look back to when you remember the Olympics?
I would say the wonderful people I met from all across the world. You know, I've made so many friends there, and such long-lasting friendship. One of them being the whole reason why I'm on this show today, Yomi, who, funny enough, we go back 17 years and we still have not ever met in person. So yeah, and then I have some other friends that I still continue to keep in touch with. But yeah, I would say the friendship, like I said, the Olympics spirit and the idea of it is for the world to come together, lay down their arms, you know, in the olden days, and put their differences aside and compete to see who's the highest, strongest, fastest, etc. And at the Olympics, it was an opportunity to feel like you were part of this excellent collegiate campus where everybody was a supreme varsity athlete and everybody was at the peak of their athletics prowess. And for me, it was really great to meet people and interact with different cultures, because it kind of took me back to my upbringing where I was getting to meet people in different countries, except for here we're all in one Olympic village. So yeah, that experience is what I really take away with it. And I look back on it, and it was just so unique and something that it's really hard to express and capture if you haven't been there.
Yeah. I don't know. I've never been to Olympics before. No, not as an athlete, or probably. So yeah. I'm actually looking forward to the next Olympics, so maybe I can capture that. But obviously, I've been a spectator watching the London Olympics here, which was really magnificent. So tell us about what you're doing now, Roberto. You are at the moment senior manager of runners training and education for New York Road Runners. Tell me first, what is New York Road Runners? What's that all about?
Yeah, certainly. New York Roadrunners is a nonprofit running organization, is a premier running organization in the country and in the world. And we put on the about 60 events a year. But this is of course pre-COVID. And the crown
Mm.
jewel is the TCS New York City Marathon that occurs every year on the first November and the first Sunday in November. And for my specific role, I'm the senior manager, as you said, of runner training education. So I'm essentially the head of training. I oversee all of adult training, both in person and virtual, and I do a lot of spokesperson work and media and PR work. So it gives me an opportunity to and a platform to really carry our message across the state, across the country, and across the world as well.
How have you coped with COVID? I mean, it's been devastating everywhere around the world. Obviously, in America, it's been really massive, you know. So, have you coped with what you're doing and the COVID
Yeah.
itself?
Yeah, it's a great question. So, literally a year ago, my wife and I and our kids just jumped in the car from New York and came up to Maine for what we thought would be a weekend or two. And 52 weekends later, we're here. So, what my wonderful team that I have to shout out, because without them, I wouldn't be able to do what I do. What we were able to do in a matter of days was pivot all our in-person training into virtual training. So virtual training means, like what you and I are doing right now is an interview. It's a virtual interview versus in a studio together. So what we're able to do is make sure that we still were meaningfully impacting our runners and supporting them through this difficult time. And instead of training them in person where we'd meet at several locations like Central Park, we replicated these parks or cohorts, if you will, in virtual platforms. So we were able to do that, and we did several versions of it throughout 2020. And we found that that really helped a lot of people keep connected and together at a time when most of us were isolated due to quarantine, and there's a lot of uncertainty and anxiety around what 2020 would evolve in. Now, about a year later, we still have a lot of virtual training, but now we're starting to slowly and gradually introduce in-person training as people are getting more vaccinated, and we're a little bit more comfortable and familiar with how to navigate this COVID era that we're still living in.